Next is spinning top. This metaphor is meant to capture the true psychospiritual character of what we normally call institutions. In reality, institutions are rotating patternings of otherness being held in place by a circulation of other-directed behaving, with each of us seeking to behave like the others. Yet, because the desire for authentic mutuality of presence is always, at every moment, surpassing and threatening to surpass the rotation of our mutual containment, the spinning top is always in danger of toppling. The more that we can grasp the spinning top nature of the seemingly fixed institutions of the psychospiritual field, the more porous the field appears and the greater our sense of the possibility of change. So it can make you dizzy if you really open yourself to this, but you know, the next time you walk into a bank, just realize that it's a spinning top. It's not the bank with it like a thing. It's actually something in the being created by everybody behaving the way that they're behaving, internalizing the different roles of within the projected hierarchy of the bank itself. It's a spinning top. You know, if you've ever seen somebody lose their place on television, you realize that something that looks fixed is actually being created at every moment. And if you lose your place, as Nixon did when he announced the bombing of Cambodia, he lost his place in the speech. And suddenly, in a shocking moment, it suddenly felt like the whole thing, the president, that he's the president, that we are at war with some them over there who are the Cambodians, that we are just and they are not, and that all the implicit narrative in what was taking place in the speech announcing the bombing of Cambodia was up for grabs because he lost his place. It was just being held in place by a series of images as long as everybody behaved in accordance with the images. And the viewer felt, I am also in American society listening to the president speak. But if the president loses his place, he can lose, if to the extent that the presidency is dependent on an image performing perfectly, he can't lose his place in the speech, at least not for more than a few seconds, or the whole thing seems to come unglued. This happened in Bush versus Gore when they couldn't pick the president for, I don't remember how long it was, a month anyway, or 6 weeks, in the year 2000, because the election was too close. And there was a period when no one knew who the president was. And it seemed like the whole group could dissolve, which was a great feeling, by the way. Like, you know, so you could see that the actual construction of reality was what I earlier described as a rotation, or what I sometimes in the book describe as a spinning top. To be able to see institutions as spinning tops is to realize they could be toppled, they could be changed. So there are a few metaphors in the book like that. Spinning top is one, to be able to see the corporation, the family, the institutions of the society as more like spinning tops than fixed things. Is similar to the moat. That's another key metaphor that I use in the book to try and capture what it's like to relate to somebody across a great distance. Mm-hmm. Even when you're fully performing your own role, you might feel not connected to the other person at all, but just two people performing roles together, carrying out a kind of social script. And the actual existential space between people then is well characterized well described as separated by a moat.
Mhm.
So there are a few metaphors in the book like that. The spinning top is one of them.
Uh, so that, as an epilogue to that video, and I wanted to give an interesting example that captures how it's possible to break through the rotating patterning that comprises our institutions in the form of what I'm calling a spinning top, always in danger of falling over. That's when the example I have is relates to my friend Paul Harris, who was one of the sort of activist lawyers of the 60s, one of the best ones. And he represented a client named Stephanie Klein in a court case. So the choreography of the courtroom was clear. The fence is there. The DA is here. The defense attorney is here. The judge is elevated from the rest. Everything is presenting itself as if it were the fixed reality of the courtroom that everyone must defer to. And Stephanie Klein, the defendant, came out for a bail hearing, and they wouldn't let her because she was accused of a bombing and they thought she was too dangerous, even though she was actually in reality not guilty of it, they wouldn't let her come and sit next to her lawyer, Paul Harris. Instead, they kept her in the prisoner's dock, which was on the other side of the district attorney's table. And Paul Harris said, Your Honor, Judge, my client has a Sixth Amendment right to counsel. I need to have her next to me in order to argue this motion, because he could see that she was just languishing alone over in the prisoner's dock, that it was there was a lack of solidarity. It didn't sit well with him. And the judge, so he made a motion that based on the Sixth Amendment right to counsel, that she be allowed to come and stand next to him. The judge denied the motion. And so Paul just got up out of his chair to argue his motion, walked across the room in front of the DA and between the DA and the judge, stood next to his client who was in the prisoner's dock to argue that bail should be reduced. And the judge had to turn and the DA had to turn to face him. The judge did not stop Paul, I would say, because of the authenticity of the gesture. And he then argued the motion for the reduction of bail from that spot next to Stephanie. So the key point to see about this is that he broke apart the rotating patterning of behavior that constituted the courtroom and introduced into it authenticity, care for his client, conviction of her innocence, belief in her innocence, solidarity with her, protecting her from isolation against the entire structure of the state symbolized in this one proceeding. And he did not win the bail hearing, but he empowered his client, and he transmitted that to all the people in the room who were there as her supporters, and it shifted the balance of power somewhat throughout the rest of the trial when she was ultimately acquitted. And the integrity of the gesture, the authenticity of the gesture, transcended deference to the rotating patterning of otherness that constituted the behavior in the courtroom. That I've already described that in another provision of the glossary, what that means. The fact that the whole courtroom is always in motion, it looks fixed. Actually, it's in motion and it's under strain, trying to keep up, everybody trying to play their part and carry out their roles. And when he broke through that with an authentic human gesture, he created a new moment of human presence that actually increased the strength of the defense in the case. So I think the point to be gained here is that the system is not a fixed thing. It's not a fixed thing. It's always in motion and it's always under strain because everyone is trying to keep up the pattern that constitutes it. And so always in motion, always under strain, always could fall over like a spinning top, always being supported to try and keep itself spinning, and always capable of transformation.